Hello friends, I am Dani. Welcome back to Summer Skye Gardens. Now in today's video, we're going to be doing something a little bit different. As you can see, we're not out in the garden. We're not even using anything from the garden, but we are going to be doing something homemade, and that is making sourdough bread. Now I feel like everybody jumped on the sourdough train back in 2020. I just got on it this past year, and through a lot of trial and error, I have mastered making a super delicious, fresh, homemade loaf of sourdough. So I wanted to show you how I do it, how I feed my starter, what is a starter, how you go through the process of making sourdough through all the trial and error that I have done so that you can have freshly baked bread whenever you want it. As always, give this video a like, comment, share it. I hope you enjoy it. So the biggest thing that you need to know that sets sourdough apart from other types of bread is that you need what's called a starter. You need actively growing alive yeast. Now you can buy a dry starter, a wet starter, get one from a friend, wherever you want to get it. I got mine from Baker Creek Heirloom Seeds. It was a dry starter. It came in the mail, a little bitty packet, and there was super easy instructions for how to get it started. But pretty much it's actively growing yeast that you add to your sourdough to make it big and fluffy and have all those holes, which is a lot different from using dry yeast just out of a can when you're making other types of bread. So you want to first get your starter going, get it actively fed, figure out how that's going to work for you. I'm going to give you some tips on how I do it, but get that going first, master that first, before you start making your bread. Because trust me, if you don't have a good starter, if it's not well fed, your bread is going to be no bueno. So I'm going to show you my starter. I actually have divided mine into 2 jars, kind of like as a safety net. If one of them goes bad or gets infected, then the other one is still good and I don't have to start from scratch. I just keep them in mason jars. You can see this one is a little low just because I recently used it. And you can see here, it needs to be fed. Usually when a starter is well fed and actively growing, it's really like big and fluffy and kind of like sticky gooey. Over time, it will settle down and form this liquid chaff here. So when you see that this is popping up on your starter, it's time to feed it. So you just want to open it and make sure that the inside is still nice and clear. If you ever see any color like yellow or green, it's starting to mold and it is not safe to eat. You need to chunk the whole thing out. But if you stay on top of this, then you really shouldn't see that happen. Like I said, I keep mine in mason jars. I find that if I store it somewhere dark, it doesn't grow as well. So when I'm feeding it, because I'm going to use it, I keep it out here on my kitchen counter, kind of in the natural light, and it grows a lot better. I will feed mine daily for several days leading up to when I'm going to make sourdough, get it nice and fluffy, and when I see it's like that, then I know I'm good to go. When it's like this, I haven't fed this one in probably a week. When it gets to this point, it's gonna take several days to get it back up nice and fluffy. I know some people that feed theirs daily, either all year or in the winter seasons when they're doing a lot of baking, or I know some people that just kind of do it once a week. For me, it's once daily if I'm gonna be baking for a few days beforehand, otherwise kind of once weekly because I tend to forget about it. All right, so let's get ours fed. I'm gonna show you how I measure everything. Side note, you wanna measure stuff out. I've tried to do it without measuring, did not work. So let me take you through that process, and over the next few days, I'm gonna show you how it's gonna turn really nice and fluffy, and then we're gonna go through the process of actually making some bread. So all you really need for feeding your sourdough is the starter itself, which like I said, I keep into mason jars, and then I have 2 empty ones that I transfer it to. You want to have bread flour, and I have tried to use regular flour and it does not cook as well. So get you some legit bread flour, a spoon to kind of mix it up, and then a little scale. So first thing is I open the jars gently because they will ferment and build up a little bit of air. So kind of sit them out. I will get an empty jar. I turn my scale on, wait for it to hit 0. I put my jar on, and then I zero it out. I like to add bread flour first, and I try to do 60 grams of bread flour, 60 grams of starter, and then 60 grams of warm water, and mix it all together. I found that number to be probably the best combination. So we're just gonna add flour in. So I've got my freshly fed starter here on the counter, and you can see here I put a piece of tape with a permanent marker line right at this level. This is a really helpful tip if you're new to doing this, so that you can see, hey, it's getting fluffed up and it really should like double up in size. By now I can tell, but it's still a little bit of a habit for me to do this, but you know that your starter is well fed when it's really fluffed up to almost double the size. So let's give this a day and check back on it tomorrow. All right, here we are back with our sourdough. I have now fed it 3 days in a row, and this is what it looks like. It is super fluffy and bubbly. This is where you want your starter when it comes time to make your bread. All right, let's open it up, and I'm gonna show you the consistency and how it looks. Be careful when you're undoing the top. There'll be some trapped air inside. You can see all those nice little bubbles, stirring it up. It's nice and like light and fluffy. So now that our starter is ready, let's bake some bread. So you wanna make sure you get a big bowl to mix everything in. Have some bread flour. Bread flour is gonna work a lot better than regular flour. Of course, you want your nice fluffy starter, just some regular salt, white sugar, and olive oil. All right, so the first ingredient that I'm gonna put in is the bread flour, and I'm gonna use 4 2/3 cup. Okay, next for the salt, I'm gonna add about 3/4 tablespoons. For the sugar, we're just gonna add 1/4 tablespoon, very little. And then I'm just gonna sift that together. And then for the liquids, first off, I'm gonna add 1 teaspoon of olive oil, or sorry, 1/2 teaspoon of olive oil. And then we're gonna add 2.5 cups of warm water. And then our starter, we're gonna add about 1/2 cup. Okay, and then we're just gonna take our hands and just mix everything together, making sure we're not over mixing it. You want it just mixed enough, but not kind of over kneading it. All right, once you have your dough mixed together, you wanna cover it either with like plastic or aluminum foil or a rag, and you're gonna let it sit and rest for 30 minutes. Then you're gonna uncover it, come back in and fold it a few times and let it sit another 30 minutes. You're gonna do that 4 different times. So it's important to keep that in the back of your mind, like, hey, once I have the dough mixed, it's gonna take anywhere from 2 to 3 hours for me to keep mixing it before we let it set for a long time. So I like to make dough in the afternoon because that way I know I have plenty of time the rest of the day to get it fully done and into the refrigerator to sit overnight. All right, here is our dough, and I have now folded it 4 different times, 30 minutes in between. So I'm going to cover it and let it rise at room temperature between 6 to 10 hours. I will probably go on the lower side just so I can catch it before bed. And then what I will do is once it's risen at room temperature, then I will put it in the refrigerator overnight, and tomorrow it will be ready to use.